Ethan Brandon, son of a powerful billionaire, lived a life of luxury until, without warning, he lost the ability to walk. Dozens of doctors failed to explain his sudden paralysis. His father, desperate, trusted a private pharmaceutical company with an experimental treatment. Nothing worked until a new maid, Amelia, noticed something others missed. Her quiet presence uncovered a hidden truth buried in silence, lies, and corporate greed. What she found would not only change Ethan's fate, but expose a secret darker than anyone imagined. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. William Brandon was once a powerful man, known for his success and wealth. He lived in a massive mansion near Boston with his wife Claire. Everything in his life seemed perfect, but that changed forever on the night Claire gave birth to their first and only child, Ethan. Complications during childbirth led to her death, and William was left alone to raise their newborn son. After that night, he became a different person. He stopped attending meetings, avoided social events, and spent most of his time locked away in his home. The mansion, once filled with life, became silent and empty. William's world now revolved only around Ethan. He loved his son deeply, but the guilt over Claire's death never left him. He blamed himself for not being able to save her. This guilt made him cold and distant from everyone else. Though he provided Ethan with the best life money could buy, William could never escape the feeling that something important had been broken forever. As Ethan grew up, he lived surrounded by everything a child could want: expensive toys, private tutors, and trips to any place he wished. William made sure his son had every comfort, thinking it would somehow make up for what they both had lost. But when Ethan turned 6, something strange began to happen. One morning, he told his father his legs felt strange. At first, William thought it was just something small, maybe a cramp or a bruise from playing, but the numbness didn't go away. Within a few days, Ethan had trouble walking. He stumbled often and said his legs felt heavy. William called their private doctor, who ran tests and suggested specialists. More doctors came, but none could figure out what was wrong. Ethan's condition kept getting worse, and within weeks, he couldn't walk at all. He was stuck in a wheelchair, and nobody could explain why. William was terrified. Watching his son suffer without answers brought back the pain of losing Claire. He felt helpless again. Desperate for a solution, William turned to every possible source of help. He spent days reading medical reports, calling experts from around the world, and flying in doctors who claimed to know about rare illnesses. Still, nothing changed. Then one of his connections told him about a pharmaceutical company named Maid. They were working on a new treatment, one that had not yet been approved, but showed promise. They claimed it could help children with unexplained nerve damage. With no other hope in sight, William contacted Maid. The company responded quickly, offering to begin the treatment immediately. They warned him it was experimental and carried risks, but William didn't hesitate. He signed the papers and let them begin the process on Ethan. He believed this was the only chance left to help his son. The treatment started right away. William was full of hope again. He watched Ethan closely every day, waiting for any sign that things might turn around. But that hope didn't last long. As the months passed, things took a turn for the worse. Instead of getting better, Ethan's condition continued to decline. He became weaker and started losing movement in his arms. He was tired all the time and barely spoke. William contacted Maid repeatedly, demanding updates, but the answers were always vague. They told him to be patient, that the treatment took time, and that side effects were normal. But William could see the truth with his own eyes. His son was slipping away. The guilt and helplessness returned, stronger than ever. The mansion, already quiet, began to feel colder and more lifeless. William stopped talking to his staff. Some of them quit, while others were let go. The once busy halls were now silent. Even the smell of fresh food and the sound of cleaning had disappeared. William barely left Ethan's side, watching him grow weaker every day. He began to question everything, his choices, his trust in Medilife, and whether he was cursed to lose the people he loved. The home that was once a symbol of wealth and stability now felt more like a tomb. William rarely left Ethan's room. He stopped working completely and didn't respond to business calls or emails. His fortune remained untouched, but none of it mattered anymore. Every part of his focus was on Ethan. He barely slept, afraid something might happen while he wasn't watching. Sometimes he'd just sit next to Ethan's bed for hours, silently blaming himself for making the wrong decisions. He thought about Claire constantly, about how he had failed her and now was failing their son too. The walls of the mansion, once filled with family portraits and warmth, now seemed to close in on him. The doctors had no new ideas. Medilife still insisted they were doing everything they could, but William no longer believed them. He felt like he had traded his son's life for false hope. It was the same feeling he had the night Claire died, powerless, confused, and full of regret. By now, there was almost no one left in the mansion. The gardeners, cooks, and maids were all gone. Only a nurse remained, and even she looked like she was ready to leave. The house felt like it was falling apart slowly, just like the family inside it. William spent his days in silence. He no longer ate regular meals and sometimes forgot to change clothes. He didn't look like a businessman anymore, just a tired, broken man trying to keep his son alive. Ethan barely spoke. He couldn't move much and had to be helped with everything. William tried to read to him, tried to smile, but everything felt forced. The bond between father and son was still there, but it was full of pain and sadness. Every day felt heavier than the last. William didn't know how much more he could take. He kept telling himself he had to stay strong for Ethan, but inside, he felt like he was already losing everything again, just like when he lost Claire. Amelia Collins arrived at the Brandon mansion early in the morning. A black car dropped her off at the gate, and she walked up the long driveway with a single suitcase in hand. William had grown tired of hiring caregivers who didn't last more than a few weeks, people who only followed instructions without ever connecting with his son. Amelia was different. She came with strong recommendations, but what caught William's attention during the interview was her calm voice and steady gaze. She didn't speak much about her past, only saying she had worked in homes before and was used to difficult environments. What she didn't mention was that she had once lost a child, her only daughter, during childbirth. That pain never left her. On her first day, the mansion felt cold and silent. The staff was gone, and the air felt heavy. She saw William once, briefly. He gave her a small nod and returned to his office. It was clear that this house carried sadness inside its walls. As she began exploring the house, Amelia noticed how empty it was. There was dust in the corners, faded furniture, and rooms that hadn't been used in a long time. She found the kitchen, cleaned it up, and began preparing something light for herself. No one asked her to cook, but the silence was uncomfortable. Later, she carefully made her way toward Ethan's room. She didn't knock, just listened quietly at the door. No sound came from inside. William hadn't given her any details about Ethan's condition, just that he was paralyzed and required help when needed. Eventually, she entered her small assigned room and began unpacking. The hours passed slowly. In the late afternoon, she passed William in the hallway. He barely looked at her and kept walking without saying anything. Amelia wasn't surprised. She had seen that kind of behavior before, people burying their emotions to avoid pain. She sensed that both father and son were holding in more than they could handle. At dinner time, Amelia tried to ask if Ethan would be eating. William simply said he doesn't eat with others and walked away. She left a tray at Ethan's door anyway, unsure if he would take it. The house remained quiet. the kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful, but empty. That night, she went to her room but couldn't sleep. Around 10 o'clock, she walked down the hallway again. That was when she heard something. It was faint, coming from behind Ethan's door. She stopped and listened. There it was, a soft, broken cry. Amelia stayed frozen for a second. Then she leaned in and heard his voice. It was weak, almost like he was whispering to himself. "Why don't my legs work anymore?" he asked quietly, over and over. Her heart sank. She didn't open the door. She didn't want to scare him or make things worse. But in that moment, something inside her changed. She knew this child was carrying a pain deeper than most adults. The next morning, Amelia began her work early. She cleaned the rooms near Ethan's and straightened up the hallways. No one had asked her to do it, but it felt right. She also checked the tray she had left outside Ethan's door. The food was mostly untouched. Still, she took it back to the kitchen and prepared something new, this time a bit simpler. Amelia tried to find small ways to reach Ethan, even without speaking to him directly. She left fresh water in his room and placed a small stuffed animal on his shelf. Later, she tried to ask William about Ethan's routine. William gave short answers. "He doesn't go outside," he said. "He doesn't like visitors." Every sentence from him sounded final, like he didn't want to talk anymore. Amelia didn't push. She understood this was a man drowning in his own guilt. But even if William didn't want help, she knew Ethan did, even if he couldn't say it out loud yet. In the days that followed, Amelia kept working silently. She didn't try to force conversations. Instead, she created patterns of comfort. She made sure Ethan's room was warm and clean. She learned what time he liked to wake up, when he preferred to rest, and how he reacted to different foods. Although Ethan still didn't speak to her, she could tell he noticed her presence. Once, she walked past his open door and saw him watching her from his bed. He didn't say anything, but he didn't look away either. That was enough for her. She also noticed how William stayed locked in his office, barely stepping out. Sometimes she'd hear him pacing inside or arguing over the phone. The whole house felt stuck, as if time had stopped. But Amelia believed it could be different. She wasn't here just to clean or serve food. She had come to help, truly help, not out of duty, but because she knew what loss felt like, and she saw it in both father and son. Then one night, it happened again. Amelia had just finished folding some laundry when she heard soft cries from Ethan's room. This time, she didn't just stand there. She gently knocked on the door and said, "It's Amelia. I'm just outside if you need anything." There was silence. Then a whisper. "Why won't my legs listen to me?" The sadness in his voice was clear. Amelia didn't respond right away. She stayed by the door, letting him know he wasn't alone. "I don't know why," she said softly, "but I'm here, Ethan. I'll stay with you." She meant it. In that moment, a decision formed in her mind. She wasn't going to treat this as just another job. This was now her mission, to help Ethan heal, however she could. She couldn't bring back her own daughter, and she couldn't erase this boy's pain, but she could stand by him. From that moment forward, she would not give up on him. Over the following weeks, Amelia became more familiar with the daily routine inside the Brandon mansion. Most days were quiet, with very little change. William remained distant, mostly inside his office, speaking rarely and avoiding eye contact. Ethan continued to stay in his room, barely speaking, barely moving. But Amelia was patient. She learned how to take care of him gently, helping him dress, brushing his hair, and making sure he ate at least a little. One thing that caught her attention was a daily injection Ethan received. Every morning at exactly 9 a.m., a courier from Medilife arrived at the house. He handed a small cooler to William, who took it straight to Ethan's room. No one else was allowed to handle it. Amelia asked once what it was, and William just said, "It's part of his treatment." She didn't ask again, but she never stopped noticing. The man who delivered it always wore black gloves, didn't make small talk, and never came inside the house. It seemed strange, but no one questioned it. One morning, Amelia was helping Ethan put on his shoes. It was something she did every day, but this time, something unexpected happened. As she reached for one of the shoes, Ethan's hand accidentally knocked over a small glass bottle that had been on his bedside table. The bottle hit the floor and shattered. The liquid inside spilled quickly and began to spread across the wooden floorboards. A sharp, metallic smell filled the air almost instantly. Amelia pulled Ethan back a little to keep him away from the broken glass. Then she reached down with a tissue to try and clean it. But the moment it touched the liquid, her fingers started to sting. She flinched and dropped the tissue. Her skin felt like it was burning slightly. Amelia looked at Ethan, surprised and confused. He had gone pale and started crying quietly. Through tears, he said, "That's the medicine the doctor makes me take, but it doesn't help me. It makes me feel worse every time." She looked closer at what was left of the bottle. There was no real label, only a small white sticker with the code RXC17 printed on it. No instructions, no company name, nothing else. Her mind began to race. Why was there no name on something being injected into a child? She asked Ethan gently, "Do you know what this is for?" He shook his head and said, "They never tell me. They just say I have to take it." Amelia helped him onto the bed and went to the hallway to find something to clean up the mess. But by the time she returned, the broken bottle was gone. She hadn't heard anyone enter the room, and Ethan said he hadn't moved. The only other explanation was that someone had quietly taken it when she stepped out. Amelia checked the hallway, but it was empty. She felt a cold tension in her chest. Someone had been watching, and they had acted fast. She went straight to William's office and knocked on the door. When he opened it, she told him what happened. He didn't react the way she expected. Instead of concern, he looked angry. "You should have called me immediately," he said. "This treatment is sensitive. You don't understand how it works." Amelia tried to explain what Ethan had told her, that the medicine made him feel worse, not better. But William cut her off. "It's not up for discussion," he said. "Medilife knows what they're doing." He then told her to stay out of anything related to the injections and reminded her that she was only there to assist with daily care. Amelia left the office feeling frustrated and worried. Something about William's reaction didn't feel right. If the treatment was really safe, why hide it? Why get angry instead of concerned? And most of all, why had someone taken the broken bottle so quickly without saying a word? The next morning, the Medilife courier returned like usual, right at 9 a.m. Amelia watched from a window as the man handed the cooler to William. The exchange was always the same, silent, fast, and strange. That day, she decided to follow the courier after he left. She waited a few minutes, then grabbed her coat and stepped outside. She didn't go far, just enough to see the black car he used. She wrote down the license plate number and watched as he drove off. She didn't know what she planned to do with that information yet, but she felt like she needed to start collecting clues. Later, she searched online for the RXC17 code, but found nothing. No medical references, no research papers, not even rumors on medical forums. It was as if the substance didn't officially exist. Amelia began writing down everything she observed each day. Times, reactions, details. She felt alone in this, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that something terrible was happening behind closed doors. That night, as she helped Ethan get ready for bed, she sat next to him and asked again how he felt after the injections. Ethan looked away and stayed silent for a while. Then he said, "It hurts after. My stomach feels bad, my arms get heavy, and I can't sleep well." Amelia nodded and asked gently, "Did you ever tell your dad?" Ethan shook his head. "He doesn't listen. He says I have to take it, or I won't get better." Amelia looked around the room and noticed how little light there was. The air smelled faintly of chemicals. She realized she had entered a situation far more serious than she expected. She wasn't just a housemaid anymore. She was someone who had discovered a secret, a dangerous one. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the broken bottle, the burning on her skin, and Ethan's scared face. For the first time, she truly understood that something deeply wrong was going on in this house, and she couldn't turn away. While cleaning the main bedroom one afternoon, Amelia pulled open the bottom drawer of an old dresser. It was stiff, like it hadn't been opened in years. Inside, beneath a pile of faded scarves and some folded clothes, she found a small leather book. The cover was worn, and the edges of the pages were yellowed with age. When she opened it, she immediately saw the name Claire Brandon written on the first page. Amelia's hands froze for a moment. Claire was William's late wife, Ethan's mother, the woman who had died during childbirth. Out of respect, Amelia hesitated before reading further, but something pushed her forward. She sat on the edge of the bed and began reading. At first, the entries were light, talking about daily life, small moments, decorating the nursery, and excitement about the baby. But as the pages moved closer to the final days of the pregnancy, the tone changed. Claire wrote about feeling strange, numbness in her legs, dizziness, and unusual muscle pain. These details quickly caught Amelia's full attention. Claire described how the symptoms began slowly. One morning, her legs felt weak. A few days later, she struggled to climb stairs. She started feeling exhausted for no reason. The dizziness made it hard to stay on her feet for too long, and sometimes her hands would tremble. She visited doctors repeatedly, but they kept telling her everything was normal for a pregnancy. According to her entries, they prescribed her a special supplement to help with energy and nutrition. Claire mentioned that this supplement came directly from a private medical program connected to MediLife. Amelia's breath caught in her throat when she read that name. Claire had taken something made by the same company that was now injecting Ethan every morning. The diary entries didn't stop there. Claire explained how the supplement was delivered in unmarked containers, how the doctors promised it would strengthen both her and the baby. But the symptoms continued to get worse, and she felt like no one was really listening to her concerns. What shocked Amelia the most was that the symptoms Claire described were nearly identical to what Ethan had been going through: tingling in the legs, weakness, and muscle issues. Claire even wrote a line that stayed with Amelia long after she closed the book. "They tell me I'm imagining things, but I know something is wrong." The last entry was dated just one day before Claire went into labor. It ended suddenly, mid-sentence. There was no goodbye, no final thoughts, just a sharp stop, as if Claire hadn't had time to return and finish it. Amelia sat there in silence, holding the book tightly. Her mind was racing. If Claire had been affected by something related to MediLife during pregnancy, it was possible that Ethan's conditions started before he was even born. That changed everything. This wasn't just a bad reaction to medication. This could be the result of something far deeper, something hidden. Amelia knew she had to show the diary to William, no matter how he might respond. Later that evening, Amelia gathered her courage and walked to William's office. He was sitting behind his desk, looking tired and distant as usual. She knocked once and stepped in, holding the diary in her hands. "I found this while cleaning the bedroom," she said carefully. William looked up without much interest. When she placed the book on the desk and opened it to one of the final entries, his expression changed. He stared at the pages but didn't read. "It's Claire's diary," Amelia said softly. "She was having the same symptoms Ethan has now. She mentioned a supplement from MediLife." William closed the book immediately. His voice was cold when he finally spoke. "Reading that won't change anything," he said. "She's gone, and nothing will bring her back." Amelia tried to explain that it could help them understand what's happening to Ethan, but William stood up and ended the conversation. "Leave it alone," he said firmly. "You're here to take care of Ethan. Don't dig up the past." She wasn't angry at William, at least not completely. She saw the pain behind his harsh words, but she also saw something else: fear. He didn't want to face what the diary suggested. Maybe he already knew part of it. Maybe he had suspected something for years, but chose not to act. Amelia returned to her room and placed the diary in a safe place. She reread the final pages again and again. Claire hadn't died suddenly. Her body had been warning her for weeks, and no one had believed her. Now, her son was suffering in almost the exact same way. Amelia knew this wasn't just a coincidence. She also understood that she wouldn't get help from William. His silence wasn't just grief, it was denial, and that denial was dangerous. If she wanted to help Ethan, she would need to keep looking for answers on her own. No more waiting. No more hoping someone else would act. The next morning, Amelia woke up early and started writing everything down. She copied Claire's last entries onto a separate notebook. She made a timeline, listing the symptoms, the medications, the doctors Claire had mentioned. Then she added Ethan's medical routine, what he received, when, and how he reacted. It was all starting to form a pattern, a link that tied mother and son through a chain of hidden medical decisions. Amelia also made a list of names, hoping to track down one of the doctors Claire had mentioned. If any of them were still working with Medilife, they might know what RxC17 really was, or what the supplement had contained. Amelia felt a growing sense of urgency. Ethan was getting worse, not better, and time was running out. She didn't know what she would find, or how dangerous it might be, but she had already made up her mind. If no one else was going to uncover the truth, she would, even if it meant doing it alone. One quiet afternoon, while Amelia was organizing the living room, a black car pulled up in front of the mansion. A tall man in a blue suit stepped out and walked confidently to the front door. He looked polished, like someone used to giving orders. William met him at the entrance and led him inside without introducing him to anyone. Amelia noticed him right away. His smile didn't seem real, and his words felt rehearsed. He greeted William with a firm handshake and spoke in a calm but overly smooth voice. "Dr. Graham West," he said. "Clinical director at Medilife. I've brought the latest batch. This should help stabilize the boy's condition." He opened a small metal case and handed William a few clear glass vials. They looked identical to the ones Amelia had seen before. She stood at a distance, pretending to dust a nearby shelf. The doctor walked over to Ethan's chair, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, and quietly slipped something into a side pocket before walking out. After Dr. Graham left, Amelia waited until no one was watching, and then carefully checked the pocket of Ethan's chair. Her heart beat faster as she reached in and pulled out a small ampule. It looked exactly like the broken bottle from before. Clear liquid, no label, no instructions, just a strange, cold glass container. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held it. She didn't know if it was meant to be hidden or simply forgotten, but either way, it made no sense. Why would a doctor secretly leave medicine in a child's chair? She wrapped the vial in a tissue and tucked it away in her apron pocket. The feeling of fear returned stronger than ever. Something was wrong with all of this. It wasn't just about miscommunication or bad treatment anymore. It was beginning to look like something more serious, something dangerous. Amelia looked at Ethan, who was sitting quietly, unaware of what had just happened. She knew she couldn't stay quiet anymore. Later that evening, as Amelia walked past the hallway near William's office, she noticed the door was slightly open. William was on the phone, speaking in a low but tense voice. She paused and stood quietly near the corner, careful not to make a sound. On the other end of the line, she heard Dr. Graham's voice. He wasn't friendly now. His tone was sharp and direct. "There must be no mistakes, William," the doctor said. "No discussions with outsiders. No one else is to know about the formula, not even your staff." Total silence is part of the agreement. William tried to respond, but the doctor interrupted. You've already received more than enough support from us. Don't forget what's at stake. The call ended shortly after. Amelia stayed frozen in place, heart racing. The conversation hadn't sounded like professional guidance. It sounded like a threat. Graham didn't care about Ethan's health. He cared about keeping things quiet. That one phone call changed how Amelia saw everything inside the house. The next morning, Amelia knew she had to be more careful than ever. From that day on, she started paying attention to every single detail. She began writing everything down in a small notebook she kept hidden under her bed. Every delivery, every visit, every word spoken between William and anyone from Medilife, she recorded all of it. She noticed that deliveries from Medilife now came every 2 days instead of once a week. The vials inside the cooler were the same size, always unmarked, and always handled only by William. Amelia tried to talk to William again, asking if Ethan's treatment had changed. He answered vaguely and didn't meet her eyes. The doctor knows what he's doing, he said. I'm trusting the process. But Amelia had stopped trusting any of it. She noticed Ethan's reactions to the injections were getting worse. He was more tired, more distant. His arms now showed bruises where the injections were given. No one else seemed to care, but Amelia did. She knew she was watching something terrible unfold. Each time the courier arrived, Amelia made sure to observe everything. She kept track of the time, the number of vials delivered, and how long William spent handling them. She even began checking the trash late at night for anything that might be discarded. Boxes, wrappers, used syringes. Once she found a slip of paper with the same code she had seen before, RxC17. Still no instructions, still no explanation. When she asked Ethan how he felt after each injection, he gave the same answer. Worse. He said it quietly without emotion, like it had become normal. Amelia felt helpless, but she didn't let it show. She comforted Ethan as best as she could and kept all her discoveries in her notebook. She started to suspect that William might not even know the full truth, that he might be blindly following orders out of desperation. But even if that was true, it didn't excuse what was happening. Amelia couldn't let Ethan go through this alone. Not anymore. As the days passed, Amelia's fear turned into determination. She knew now that something very serious was going on inside that house. Something that involved Medilife, secret medicines, and silence enforced through fear. Doctor. Graham's visit had opened her eyes, and the hidden ampule confirmed that secrecy was part of the plan. Amelia decided she would no longer be just a caretaker. She would become an investigator, a protector, someone who would not stop until she found out what they were doing to Ethan and why. Each day, she watched more carefully, listened more closely, and made sure to hide her notes well. She waited for any chance to gather more proof. She knew she had to be smart. One mistake could get her fired or worse, but she also knew that if she did nothing, Ethan would continue to suffer. From the moment Graham walked out of that door, Amelia had changed. She was no longer just suspicious, she was certain, and she was ready to do whatever it took to uncover the truth. Ethan's health started to get worse. What began as weakness in his legs had now turned into something much more painful and frightening. He began having sharp pain in his back and stomach, sometimes crying for hours during the night. His arms twitched without control, and sometimes he couldn't hold objects or even lift his head properly. Fever came and went, especially in the early hours of the morning. Amelia noticed sweat soaking his pillow and his small hands gripping the bedsheets when the pain hit. William became more and more anxious, but he continued to rely on the Medilife treatment. Every time Ethan got worse, William called the company. They always promised that what Ethan was experiencing was normal and part of the body's adjustment. They also said the doses needed to increase for better results. William agreed, even though the cost was growing. Each new vial of the so-called medicine came with a heavy price, and Amelia knew they were all paying for something that wasn't helping. Amelia paid close attention to everything. She began tracking Ethan's symptoms in her notebook. Over time, she noticed something strange. Whenever a delivery was delayed and Ethan went a day or two without receiving his injection, his condition slightly improved. He still couldn't walk, but the pain lessened, and the fevers didn't come. When the medication resumed, the spasms returned immediately. This happened more than once, and it was enough to convince her something was wrong with the treatment itself. She brought it up gently to William, but he dismissed it quickly. "He needs consistency," he said. "That's what the doctors keep telling me." Amelia didn't argue, but she knew she couldn't rely on William anymore. He was blinded by hope and guilt. She started staying up late, watching the gates of the mansion, looking for anything unusual. One night around 11 p.m., she saw a delivery truck enter through the back. It didn't look like a medical vehicle, no logos, just a plain white truck, unmarked, moving quietly through the dark. That same night, Amelia followed the truck on foot for a short distance after it left. She couldn't get too close without being noticed, but she took down the license plate number. The next morning, she used a computer in town to run a basic online search. It took time, but eventually she found a link between the truck and a company she had never heard of before, Biophase Laboratories. It was hard to find any public information. The company had no website, and almost nothing came up in news articles. But through a legal records database, she found one key detail. Biophase was listed as a subsidiary of Medilife. That discovery made her stomach twist. She kept digging. A few small research articles and archived documents from years earlier mentioned Biophase in connection with human testing. One vague document even referenced a substance code, RxC17. That was the same label on Ethan's medication. Amelia sat there, shocked. It wasn't just bad medicine. It was part of a hidden research experiment. Over the next few days, Amelia tried to confirm everything she could. She timed every night delivery. She noticed that not all boxes from the trucks went into the Brandon mansion. Some were transferred to smaller vans parked near the property, vans that later drove off in different directions. She tracked one of those vans on foot for a few blocks before losing it. When she returned home, she dug deeper into Biophase. Eventually, she found a research abstract, not publicly available, but still saved in a scientific database. It described the testing of a new neurological compound in children with muscle-related illnesses. The file didn't name names, but it included symptoms, paralysis, spasms, fever, and eventual organ stress. It described the results as inconclusive and said testing was ongoing. That's when she realized Ethan wasn't sick because of an unknown disease. He was being used, without consent, to test something never approved for use, and the symptoms weren't side effects. They were exactly what the drug was designed to do. Amelia's hands shook as she copied down everything she found. Her notebook was now filled with records, dates, truck numbers, company names, symptoms, and reactions. She didn't know yet how to expose all of it, but she knew one thing for sure. Ethan had been turned into a test subject. The promises of healing were lies designed to keep William quiet and compliant. The rising costs weren't just for medicine. They were a payment to keep the system running smoothly without questions. Amelia understood that if she confronted Medilife directly, they could silence her or make her disappear. She had seen how they operated, how they delivered unmarked drugs, how they threatened William over the phone, and how Dr. Graham smiled with practiced words while hiding poison in a child's chair, but she wasn't planning to run or hide. She started taking photos of the vials, recording videos of the deliveries, and preparing copies of all the evidence. This time, she wouldn't let them cover it up. Now, every time Amelia looked at Ethan, she saw more than a boy in pain. She saw the result of a powerful company's secret plan. She still acted normal during the day, helping with meals, cleaning the house, and staying close to Ethan. But behind the scenes, she was preparing to take action. She hid copies of her notes in 3 different places in the house, just in case someone tried to take them. She also started contacting people anonymously, looking for journalists or former employees of Medilife. Every night she double-checked her information and added new details. Her fear had turned into resolve. The failing miracle that Medilife promised was nothing but a controlled disaster. Ethan wasn't being healed. He was being damaged on purpose. And now that Amelia knew the truth, she wasn't going to stop until she found a way to end it. She had uncovered the heart of the problem. RxC17 wasn't a treatment gone wrong. It was a human experiment, and Ethan was at the center of it. Amelia had spent days gathering proof, documenting everything she could about Ethan's treatment, the deliveries from Medilife, and the connection to Biophase laboratories. Her notebook was filled with dates, symptoms, photos, and names. After what she had learned, she couldn't stay silent anymore. That afternoon, she walked straight to William's office with the folder in her hands. He was sitting behind his desk, reading papers, barely looking up as she entered. "We need to talk," she said firmly. She placed the folder on the desk and opened it. "This is everything I've found. Your son is not sick, he's being used in a drug test." William stared at the pages for a moment, but then pushed them aside. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice already rising. Amelia didn't back down. She pointed at a document with the RxC17 code and explained how Ethan's symptoms got worse after each dose. That's when William lost control. He shouted at her, accused her of wanting money, and told her to leave the house immediately. Amelia stood there, shocked by his reaction. She had expected resistance, maybe disbelief, but not rage. William's hands were shaking as he pointed to the door. "You think I don't care about my son?" he yelled. "You come into my house, accusing me after everything I've done?" Amelia tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't listen. He repeated that she was fired and that she had no right to investigate anything. "I trusted you," he said. "Now get out before I call the police." Amelia left the office with her heart pounding. She went straight to Ethan's room to check on him. He was breathing fast, his face red with fever. Then suddenly his body stiffened and he started shaking uncontrollably. A strong convulsion took over him. Amelia didn't think twice. She wrapped him in a blanket and rushed outside to the garden, hoping the fresh air might help. She placed him gently on a bench and held his hand, whispering that he would be okay. While sitting in the garden with Ethan, trying to help him breathe, Amelia heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly and saw Dr. Graham standing near the hedge, dressed in the same sharp blue suit. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. "You've caused enough problems," he said. "Hand over what you took." Amelia stood between him and Ethan. "I'm not giving you anything," she said. Graham took a step closer, his hand reaching inside his coat. That's when she saw the gun. Her body tensed, but she didn't move. "You have no idea what you're involved in," he said. "Return the files and we'll forget this ever happened." Amelia refused again, this time louder. As Graham opened his mouth to threaten her once more, a voice came from the doorway. "What the hell is going on?" It was William. He stood there, watching the scene unfold. Graham turned around, surprised and panicked. "This isn't what it looks like," he said quickly. But it was too late. William had heard everything. In his rush to leave, Graham turned to run, but in the process, he dropped a folder he had been carrying under his arm. It hit the ground near the garden path and opened slightly. The logo of Medilife was printed on the front. William walked over and picked it up. He flipped through the pages and his face turned pale. The documents inside were internal reports, confidential ones, showing the full truth about RxC17. The chemical was designed to cause temporary paralysis in young patients, forcing ongoing dependence on additional medication. The goal wasn't to heal, but to keep the patients in treatment for as long as possible, ensuring continuous profit. William couldn't believe what he was reading. The doses, the side effects, and even Ethan's name were listed as part of the trial group. His hands trembled as he dropped the folder back to the ground. He had paid for every vial. He had trusted Medilife, and now he realized he had unknowingly allowed this to happen to his own son. William stood still for several seconds, silent and stunned. Amelia stepped closer and said, "I tried to tell you." But William couldn't respond. He looked at Ethan, now sleeping in the blanket on the bench, and then back at the folder. His voice was low and broken when he finally spoke. "I gave them everything. I thought I was saving him." Amelia nodded. "You were lied to, but it's not too late to stop it." William looked down at the papers again, then back at the house. Dr. Graham was gone, having disappeared into the night. But his mistake had left behind the truth. William bent down, picked up the folder again, and held it tightly. For the first time in months, his face changed. The anger was gone, replaced by guilt and something else, determination. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew what had to be done. He had helped create this tragedy, and now he had to fix it, somehow. They both returned to the house slowly, Amelia carrying Ethan, while William followed closely behind. No one said much. The night felt heavier now, not because of confusion, but because of clarity. There were no more excuses or false hope. The truth had been exposed. William didn't try to defend Medilife anymore. He didn't argue or ask Amelia to stay away from the matter. Instead, he asked her to show him everything she had collected. For the first time, they were on the same side. As Amelia laid out her notes and photos, William took everything in. He looked tired, older than ever, but more focused. "They used my son to test a drug," he said, more to himself than to her, "and I helped them do it." Amelia placed her hand on his arm. "Now we stop them." William nodded slowly. The damage had been done, but the fight wasn't over. The lies were no longer hidden, and William Brandon was finally ready to face the truth. William stayed awake the entire night, sitting at his desk, surrounded by the open folder from Medilife and the documents Amelia had collected. The house was completely silent, but his mind was loud with thoughts. He read every single page, line by line, unable to stop. The more he read, the worse it got. Ethan's name appeared multiple times, along with codes and dates that matched their treatment schedule. Other children were listed too, some with notes about similar symptoms, others marked as unresponsive or withdrawn from the trial. The language was cold, clinical, and without emotion. These weren't patients to Medilife. They were test subjects. He saw evidence of bribes paid to doctors, altered reports, and fake documents sent to parents. The company had used wealthy families as unknowing funders, hiding behind hope and promises. The guilt hit William hard. He had funded the slow suffering of his own son. Every signature, every payment, every quiet acceptance, he had played a part in all of it without even realizing. When Amelia entered the office in the early morning, she found William still sitting at the desk. His eyes were red, and the pages were spread out everywhere. He looked up at her but didn't say anything at first. He didn't have to. She could see everything in his face, the pain, the guilt, the realization. She walked over and sat beside him. For a long moment, there was silence. Then quietly, William said, "They used my son, and I let them." His voice broke. Amelia placed a hand gently on his shoulder and told him it wasn't his fault. He shook his head. "I was so desperate to fix things. I didn't see what they were doing." That's when Amelia, after holding it in for so long, finally told him the truth about her own past. Her daughter had died years earlier after receiving a medication in a public hospital. That drug was later linked to Medilife. She had no idea they were connected until she saw the name again in this house. William turned to her, stunned. "So you already knew what they were capable of?" he asked. Amelia nodded slowly. "Not everything, but enough to be afraid. They both sat in silence again, the weight of their losses connecting them in a way words couldn't explain. What were the chances that both of them, one rich, one poor, had suffered from the same company's lies? It didn't feel like coincidence anymore. Maybe it was fate. Maybe they were meant to meet, meant to uncover the truth together. William finally let the emotions take over. He cried, not loud, but deeply. Amelia stayed beside him, holding his hand, letting him release everything he had kept inside for years. When the tears stopped, William looked at her and said, "We have to stop them. We have to make this public." Amelia agreed. They began making plans to copy the documents, contact the right people, and prepare everything. But they didn't realize that time was running out and that someone was already watching them. Later that day, as they prepared to leave the house and head into town, Amelia went to check the cameras. She had developed the habit of reviewing the security system daily since things had started feeling unsafe. But this time, something was wrong. The screens were dark. Every camera feed showed no signal. She tried restarting the system, but nothing changed. William checked the door locks. They were all disabled. Panic started to set in. "This doesn't make sense," he said, walking through the house quickly, checking windows and entrances. Every system they relied on for safety had gone down at the same time. That couldn't be an accident. Amelia checked the power box and found that the cables had been tampered with. Wires were cut, but not cleanly, ripped as if done in a hurry. The garden lights, the motion sensors, even the phone lines were dead. William looked around, trying to stay calm, but it was clear now. This wasn't a random failure. It was a warning. Someone had been here or was planning to return. Fear started to creep in. William closed all the curtains and told Amelia to keep Ethan close. He checked every door again, this time placing furniture in front of some of them. They had planned to go to the police, to the press, to anyone who could help. But now they were trapped, at least for the moment. Amelia called out for Ethan and brought him into the living room where they could all stay together. William paced back and forth, running through possibilities. "They know," he finally said. "Medilife knows we're going to expose them." Amelia didn't ask how he knew. She felt it too. The folder, the confrontation in the garden, the missing data, all of it pointed to one thing. They were being watched. Everything had been fine until they tried to fight back. Now the cameras were off, the house was open, and someone had made sure they would feel unsafe. Amelia checked her pocket and felt the flash drive with the backups. "We still have what we need," she whispered. William looked at her with a mix of fear and resolve. "Then we have to move fast." But before they could do anything else, headlights flashed through the front window. A black car had just pulled into the driveway. Not the usual delivery truck. This was a sleek, dark sedan. The engine shut off. No one got out immediately. William stepped back from the window and signaled for Amelia to stay low. The front door hadn't been locked because the system had failed. Amelia moved to grab Ethan's wheelchair while William peeked through the side curtain. After a few seconds, the car door opened. A man stepped out slowly, dressed in a dark coat. He walked with purpose, his face hard to see in the dim light. But William recognized the shape, the way he moved. "It's him," he said quietly, "the one behind all of this." Amelia's hands tightened around the chair. The man wasn't just a messenger. He was the one who controlled it all, and now he had come to finish what he started. Inside the house, everything went silent. The air felt heavy, and every sound became sharper. The ticking clock, the creak of the floor under William's shoes. The front door handle moved slightly but didn't open. They still had a few moments before whoever was outside forced their way in. Amelia looked at William and asked, "What do we do?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, slowly, he turned and said, "We protect Ethan. We don't give up the evidence, no matter what." Amelia nodded. She grabbed the flash drive and tucked it deep into her coat pocket. William took the folder and moved toward the hidden space under the stairs. They hid everything as quickly as they could, then stood together, waiting. The truth was finally out, but now the cost of knowing it had become dangerously real. In that moment, they understood that exposing Medilife would not be easy. The man outside was proof of that, but even in fear, they were no longer alone, and they were no longer afraid to fight. Richard Lang arrived just after noon. A black SUV stopped in front of the Brandon mansion, and several men in dark suits stepped out first. They looked around the property, checking every corner before opening the door for the last passenger. Lang stepped out calmly, dressed in an expensive grey suit, his face expressionless. His presence filled the space with tension. William stood waiting near the front door. Amelia stayed inside, watching from a distance while holding Ethan close. Lang walked in without hesitation, nodding briefly to William. "Let's talk," he said coldly. The two men entered the study while the bodyguards waited nearby. Amelia, worried but determined, followed quietly and stayed near the door where she could hear. Inside, Lang's tone was clear and direct. "We're prepared to offer you $20 million, he said. "In exchange, you'll sign an agreement to keep everything quiet. No police, no press, no lawsuits." William didn't speak. Lang leaned in and added, "Accept it or your son won't walk again." She didn't move from her spot, but quickly slipped her phone from her pocket, opened the voice recorder, and tapped the live stream button to a contact she had already warned. Her journalist friend was now listening in real time. Back in the room, Lang continued speaking. "You don't understand how deep this goes, William. This isn't just about one boy. If you talk, everything collapses." William's hands were clenched. "You experimented on children," he said. Lang didn't deny it. "It was necessary for progress, and your money made it possible. So let's not pretend you're just a victim." Amelia knew she had heard enough. She slowly stepped back into the hallway, texting one word to her contact: "Send." Just as she hit send, Lang stepped out and saw her. His eyes immediately dropped to the phone in her hand. Realizing what had happened, he lunged forward and tried to grab it. Amelia pulled back, yelling for help. One of the bodyguards began to move in her direction. Before the situation could spiral further, a loud voice shouted from the entrance, "Police! Nobody move!" Armed officers stormed into the house, weapons raised. Lang froze. Graham, who had snuck in through the back shortly after Lang's arrival, tried to slip away but was immediately grabbed and handcuffed. Amelia backed away as officers took control of the scene. William stood in shock as everything unfolded. The police explained they had received a real-time recording of Lang offering a bribe and threatening a child's health, enough to issue an immediate warrant. The officers placed Lang in cuffs, reading him his rights. His calm mask finally cracked and he shouted, "You don't understand what you're doing." But no one listened. It was over. Medilife's secrets were no longer hidden. Officers collected evidence from the house, including the RX-C17 vials and hidden documents. Paramedics arrived moments later and began examining Ethan. One of the doctors looked at Amelia and said, "There might be a way to help him. We'll need to act fast." Within minutes, they confirmed what Amelia had feared for weeks. The compound RX-C17 was designed to block signals between the brain and the muscles. It didn't destroy nerves, it suppressed them. A doctor explained, "It's not permanent, but the longer it stays in the system, the harder it is to reverse." Amelia asked, "Is there a treatment?" The doctor nodded. "There's an antidote. It was never made public, but we found mentions of it in the database we accessed through Medilife records." William stood by Ethan's side, watching as the team prepared him for immediate transfer. "We're taking him to a secure hospital," one of the paramedics said. "He'll need intensive care, but if we start soon, there's a real chance for recovery." For the first time in a long while, William felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. He leaned down and kissed his son's forehead. Ethan, weak but conscious, gave a small smile. As the ambulance pulled away, William stood in the driveway, watching until the flashing lights disappeared from view. Amelia stood beside him, her phone still in her hand. The police had already taken Lang and Graham into custody. Reporters had started to gather near the gates. The truth had spread fast. William looked at Amelia and said, "I don't know how to thank you." She shook her head. "You don't have to. Just fight for him now." He nodded. "I will." That sentence meant everything. It wasn't a promise to her. It was a promise to Ethan. A promise that he would no longer be left in the hands of companies that lied, that he would no longer be treated like an experiment. William had spent years running from his past, trying to fix things with money and silence. But now he understood that real strength came from standing up, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. He would face every consequence, every truth for his son. Back inside the mansion, everything felt different. The house, once filled with secrets and fear, now felt like a place where a new chapter could begin. The security systems were turned back on. The Medilife files were sealed and handed to the authorities. Amelia started packing some of Ethan's things to bring to the hospital later. William walked through the rooms slowly, as if seeing everything for the first time. He stopped at Ethan's room, where the toys were still in place, and the bed was unmade. He sat down and stared at the wall for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. The garden, where so much had happened, looked peaceful again. He pulled out his phone, called the hospital, and asked for hourly updates. "Don't let him out of your sight," he told the nurse. As the call ended, he whispered to himself, "This time, I will fight for you, my boy." And for the first time, he meant every word. Several months had passed since that terrifying night when everything changed. After weeks of treatment, daily therapy, and constant monitoring, Ethan was finally getting better. The antidote had worked slowly, helping his nervous system regain control. The doctors warned it would be a long road, but William never left his side. Amelia was there too, supporting Ethan through every small victory. And then, one morning, something incredible happened. While trying to reach a toy on the floor, Ethan slowly pushed himself up and stood on his own. His legs shook, but he didn't fall. William, sitting nearby, dropped his newspaper and froze. Amelia covered her mouth, tears already welling up. Ethan took one step, then another. He wobbled, but he kept going. 3 full steps before Amelia caught him in a hug. William joined them, pulling both into his arms. "You did it, Ethan," he whispered. "You really did it." That moment marked a turning point. It wasn't just about walking. It was about taking his life back. News of the Medilife scandal had spread quickly after Lang's arrest. The video Amelia recorded became the center of the investigation, shared by every major news outlet. Journalists uncovered hidden contracts, reports, and financial documents linking the company to illegal drug trials in multiple countries. Dozens of families came forward, sharing stories just like William's, children harmed by a treatment they were told would save them. The company collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and government investigations. Medilife was officially dissolved by court order. Its assets were frozen. Key executives, including Dr. Graham and Richard Lang, faced multiple charges and remained behind bars. But for William, the story didn't end with justice. He wanted to do more. With Amelia's encouragement, he donated a large part of his fortune to start a foundation. Its mission was simple: support and protect victims of illegal pharmaceutical testing. The organization offered medical care, legal help, and education for families who had nowhere else to turn. It became the legacy he wanted to leave behind. For Ethan and for Claire, Amelia never left their side. She was no longer just the woman who cleaned the rooms or cooked dinner. She had become part of the family in every way. Ethan saw her as a second mother, and William trusted her more than anyone else. They shared meals, made decisions together, and supported one another. The mansion, once filled with coldness and silence, had changed. Light now entered rooms that had been closed for years. Laughter returned. William reopened parts of the house that had been locked away in grief. He and Amelia painted Ethan's room a bright blue and let him pick out decorations for the hallway. Life was slowly finding its place again. William began writing about everything that had happened, not for profit, but to ensure no one forgot the cost of silence. Amelia helped organize events for the foundation, sharing her story with courage. What had started as pain had grown into something powerful, something real. They were not just survivors, they were a family rebuilt. One warm morning, the three of them drove out to the cemetery where Claire was buried. It was Ethan's idea. He had asked to visit her. Amelia helped him walk the final steps to the grave, guiding his pace. William stood beside them, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. The headstone was simple, elegant, and surrounded by fresh grass. Ethan looked at the grave quietly, then turned to Amelia and took her hand. "Mommy," he said softly, pointing at the sky. "The old mommy sent you to take care of me." Amelia's throat tightened. She crouched down, hugging him gently. William looked at both of them and couldn't stop the tears. He smiled through them, letting the emotion come without hiding it. It was a moment filled with meaning, not of sadness, but of peace. Claire was gone, but her love had never left. Somehow, through pain and time, her memory had helped build something new. William placed the flowers by the headstone and whispered, "He's okay now." The echoes of the past had softened. The long hallways that once felt like a prison now held life. Ethan's wheelchair sat in a corner, no longer needed every day. Toys were scattered in the living room. Fresh flowers sat on the windowsills. Amelia cooked dinner while William helped Ethan set the table. There was music playing and the sound of laughter filled the rooms. The house was alive again. No more secrets, no more fear. The truth had brought pain, but it had also brought healing. The foundation received letters of thanks every week, and new families were being helped every month. William continued to write, and Amelia began sharing her experience publicly, inspiring others to speak out. What once felt like an ending had become a new beginning. Justice had been done, not just in court, but in the way they lived now, and that was something no money or silence could ever erase. That night, William stood at the window of his study, looking out at the garden. The same place where he once thought he had lost everything was now filled with life again. He watched as Ethan ran around slowly, playing with a ball, while Amelia sat nearby reading a book. He opened the window and let the sounds of their laughter in. Closing his eyes for a moment, he breathed deeply and allowed himself to feel peace, not forced or imagined, but real. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest was gone. He had made mistakes. He had looked away when he should have acted. But now, he had done the right thing. The truth had brought suffering, but it had also brought freedom, not just for Ethan's body, but for all of their hearts. The mansion, once a place of pain and silence, had become a home again. William smiled as he whispered to himself, "This is the life Claire would have wanted." This is our new dawn. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.